LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Lydia. Happy New Year. I hope you've all had a restful Christmas and, of course, all the dreams and aspirations you have for 2021. I'm wishing you all the best. Thank you again for watching. Please follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram. But today I've got a guest all the way from America. Her name is Dr. Rola. And I'm looking forward actually to today's conversation, but I'll share a little bit about her and then I'll ask her to talk about herself. She is a licensed, I want to use the exact words, she's a licensed psychologist. She has over 16 years practice. She's been treating people in the community as well as hospital settings. She specializes in domestic violence and forensic psychology. In her personal life, she's a Christian and believes that, psychology is a practice from God, which is something that I always talk about counseling also being a practice from God. So we have like minds. She's committed to taking the mystery out of psychology and sharing practical. This is one of the aims of the program, to share sort of practical uses of psychology principles in our everyday life. She has 2 daughters. She enjoys hiking, working out, so she goes to the gym and traveling. If you please join me as I welcome Dr. Rola.
Hi, Lydia. Thank you for having me on your show. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Good evening. Thank you again.
It's definitely morning here, so your evening.
Okay, good morning. I know you're all the way in California, and you guys are.
I actually live in Georgia now. I live in Atlanta, Georgia now.
Mm-hmm.
I used to live in California, and now I live in Georgia. So I'm
okay. Okay. So you're in the states that has caused the big division right now, huh?
And we're loving all the attention. We love it. Georgians are show-offs, so we feel really good about this. And needless to say, I had to support the ones that won this time. So I'm very happy. That was my
side. So Georgia is on our minds.
Georgia is on our minds. We're it.
And I think USA, even despite the COVID, is trending big.
In some negative ways, unfortunately. Very negative.
Okay. I know I sort of did like a brief overview because the listeners can't see all your accomplishments, and I thought if I read it all out, it might be there for a little while. So do you want to talk a bit about yourself?
I think you've said it all. I'm loving my life. I'm an empty nester. So beyond working and exercising and doing the things I love, I'm trying to figure out who I am after raising 2 kids. They're 27 and 21. So I'm enjoying my life. The first time I'm not paying tuition this year. So
isn't that a relief? I know that
it feels good. So trying to rediscover myself, anyway. So thank you for sharing that.
I think up to that point,
yes,
our lives are defined. Does that make sense? Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't think you realize how defined it is And the interesting thing is my life is still defined by them, but to a degree in which I can control it.
You know, like you are born a girl, you make sure you go to school, you graduate, then you have to get married, then you have to have these children, and then you're a wife, and then when they leave, you're like, okay, who am I now? So I like that idea.
Yes,
and it's quite complex. It's a difficult
complex
thing.
And it's a process. And I hope our listeners will do the same thing in their lives too. That life is not cut and dry. It is a process. Yes.
It is a process. And I think if we don't sort of click in our minds that the children don't need us like they did when they were 5 or 10, I think we begin to wrestle with them and ourselves because we lose the sense of identity, just like you said. And then we don't know where we start, and they're thinking, oh, you don't need to do these things for me. You don't need to ring the doctors for me. And you're like, no, this is what I've done your whole life. Yeah, it's a difficult transition.
That's right. Yeah. The process we all have to go through. Life is about changes. And we need to make the adjustment. And if we don't, even something like your children leaving home can cause depression and mental illness. So I'm having to do my own self-care and also my own healing as to what that means for me. Like we hope our listeners, our viewers will do the same thing.
Yeah. And actually, that's not what we're going to talk about. But I think it's quite a significant thing because it happens to both male and female, probably more for the females, because we're like the first caregiver, the first go-to people. And then even if they're not like have left the nest, they still have all those qualities of having to have left the nest. Sort of, I use the doctor's appointment because sometimes they want to go to the doctor. I'm like, oh, should I go with you? And they're looking at me like, what the hell is wrong with this? What is wrong with that? But it's because we're in that zone. This is what we do. This is what we know to do. And when the child says, no, I'm okay, it feels like they're rejecting you. I know it felt like that for me. Yeah. So how can we
celebrate? We also have to celebrate the freedoms that we have. And we have to be grateful that we've raised adults that are able to live independently. And that gives us permission to also explore areas of our lives we haven't explored, which can also make us less irritable and less angry. Adults. Because sometimes many mothers will say things like, I spent my whole life raising you. What do I get back? What about us giving something to ourselves?
So we tend to guilt trip the children into like staying attached to us. Like what do I do now? Especially I think it's even more impactful for lone parents. That living the nest it's like a bomb to a lone parent where like now you're not longer needed and you've sort of built your life around making sure that everything is great for them, and then they like get to the point where you're no longer the bee's knees. That's tough. That's really tough.
But they always come back home to ask for help. So we never have to worry. We always get that phone call when things are not working out. And that will make you feel good that you really did have a good connection with them all those years. You'll always be a parent. It's just a different way of parenting. And this is the time to enjoy our own lives too. And I think it makes them happy when they see that we're happy and we're doing things that we love. So
what I know we didn't prepare for this, but like what suggestions can we give the listeners that will help actually occupy, because sometimes people are stuck in that zone and they don't know how to connect, or they haven't given what you're saying now is like you get to that stage, you have time, they're not you have extra money, that all that emotional, physical responsibility, you're no longer needed. So you have to find something to do with all of this energy and free time. And some women haven't dated in like 20 years. They don't like, how do they figure that out like now? Because their emotions probably haven't grown for 20 years in that area. So what are like examples of what people can do to fill that time that they have now, or something they can do with the extra money?
I think what you need to do is start to actually make plans, because
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that adult children respect you more when they see that you're enjoying your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Actually
Okay.
respect you. They can see that you're living your life. In some ways, they can be even jealous of it if they're used to you
Mm-hmm.
doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you almost command more authority and more respect when you look like you're having fun than when you go after them.
Mm-hmm.
Them knowing that you're there, but you're living your own life, in some ways may make you a little bit more attractive or in a weird way. And there's a mystery around you. What is mommy up
Mm-hmm.
to today? What is she doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think for you also, you have to remember that you have a season in your life when you're healthy and you're young to get some things
Mm-hmm.
done, which you will
Yeah.
not have
Yeah.
in 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
You want to
Mm-hmm.
capitalize on this moment and manage your time well. The
Mm-hmm.
same way children abuse our times, friends can abuse our time, other
Mm-hmm.
people can
Mm-hmm.
abuse our time. Can we sit down and set some goals for ourselves and say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
these are things I've been wanting to do before I had this child. Now I can begin to explore it. Even if you don't succeed at completing it all the time, try new things also helps your brain to work more efficiently, right? It
Mm-hmm.
improves your mood. Now you're more
Mm-hmm.
focused on exercise, you're more focused on eating well. Those things that you push by the side, that really, in some ways, because you love your children, you did it, but you're not really maximal in terms of your quality of life. Can we start
Yeah.
to quality of life? Not
Mm-hmm.
just helping on the outside. What makes me feel good about me on the inside?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a discovery, and some of the things that may come out may be a little bit difficult, but it's your time of healing and growth and advancement, and that is a blessing. So even though you miss them, you set goals, you itemize those goals, and you start with very little things like walking, eating well, and enjoying yourself, enjoying
Mm-hmm.
being you. That's what's going to make you better when you decide to date. That's going to make you better
Mm-hmm.
when you decide to negotiate relationship with others. So life goes on. It's not ending. It's just a reinventing. And what a privilege to be able to do that. If you had a
Yeah.
disabled child, for instance, you will not be able to do that. If you had a child who was
Mm-hmm.
adult at home, you would have to
Mm-hmm.
take care of that kid. The fact that they
Mm-hmm.
can leave home and not need you, can we celebrate that and understand
Yeah.
that life has mixed feelings, sadness, happiness, but this is a good time. And you should be
Yeah.
happy that you can do this. You should be
Yeah.
happy.
Thank you for that. Okay, let's get into what we had sort of not really prepared, but spoken
Yes.
about that we would share today. So, um, do you want to talk a bit about your journey into psychology? Why you chose that field?
It's
Um,
very, yeah, thank you for asking me this. And I'll keep it very short. I was
mhm,
born in England. So at a young age, my parents took me back to Nigeria, like a whole lot of us whose parents studied in England. Moved back to
mhm,
England when I was about 20. But when I was in Nigeria, I got a degree in sociology. I had wanted to do
mhm,
accounting, but it never really connected with me as much. But then I did sociology. When I got to England, I worked in administration, but then the civil service. But then I also went to do a master's in sociology of health. But
mhm,
part of my degree involved interviewing mother or preschoolers about the NHS. And I
mhm,
thoroughly enjoyed that opportunity. It was a qualitative research. But shortly after that, the opportunity came and I won the green card to come and live in the United States. I have
wow,
never
you
been
were?
to the United States ever, not even on a visit. But about
No.
a year before, never visited, never desired. About a year before, I had this God moment where I said to a
Mhm,
friend, God is going to open a door for me to move to another country. I think it's the US or Australia or Canada, but I don't know which one. So after buying this brand new home in Thamesmead, a week after, the
mhm,
green card comes through the mail. A year after, I moved to America.
mhm,
And then the journey begins. I worked in accounting a little bit, and then I found a job as a social worker. And as I was exploring job opportunities, I found out about clinical psychology. I never knew about that
mhm,
when I was in England. And then they said I could be working with people on therapy. I'm thinking, oh, wow, my research I did in England, the best part was talking to the mothers of the preschoolers.
Mm-hmm.
Pregnant, heavily pregnant, and I went for the orientation. So they accepted me. I deferred the program because the baby was a month old. And by amazing miracle of God, they moved that same program to the city I lived in because I had to move with my baby. And here I was, they were 1 and 5, went back to grad school full time, got better grades than I got when I was single without kids. Those
Mm-hmm.
kids were not sick for 4 years. They didn't even get sick to where I needed to take time off. And somehow
Wow.
God helped me. And I got this. And since then, I now know, I didn't know at the time that I would ever be in a church. At that time, when you were a psychologist, you were almost anti God at that time.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
like, why are
yeah.
you trying to be a psychologist? I just know this is my path. So I was able to go to this training, purely secular, enjoy it. But every step of the way, I felt like the word of God was relevant to what I was learning in the secular classroom. And that was the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of my journey. I feel like God brought it my way. He found me in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because with all my life issues, married, 2 little kids, had to work full time while I was in school. I don't know how God helped me to do it, but it's done and it's been
Mm-hmm.
16 years. And it's
Yeah,
been
so
forward. Always enjoy it.
that's an amazing story, like God really charted your path and
Amazing. And he
everything
will
working
for
together.
others too. He will do it for
Mm-hmm.
them. It may not be straightforward. Like you can see, my journey wasn't straightforward, but eventually it makes sense. So every
Mm-hmm.
experience is a learning process. And we all learn
Yeah,
from. Even when I was doing filing, I was learning from that. So don't
yeah,
despise
yeah.
life experience. Keep
Mm-hmm.
going. And amazingly,
Mm-hmm.
the right doors will open at the right time.
Yeah, yeah. I think that sometimes we live in that future hope,
That's right.
instead of sort of being, as we say, in the now and in the now and here, in presence, where somebody is doing, say, filing now, for example, like you
Yes.
said, and they're so lost in the future, they don't see what they're learning. They don't see how they can do this filing better. They don't see even the people around them, or how even God is taking them on a journey. So your story is
Yes.
an amazing
Yeah. In
testimony.
psychology too, we talk about mindfulness, being in the
Yeah,
present,
yeah,
especially during
hmm,
COVID. What you said is so
yeah.
powerful. Be in the now. Enjoy where you are. Make the
Where
best of
you are now.
it. It makes you to plan better even when you're good.
Yeah,
You realize,
yeah,
okay, I can do better than this, but do well at what you're doing and do not
yeah.
despise the experience.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's this idea of taking one day at a time, or
That's right.
a couple of hours as they come.
That's right.
And that really lessens the levels of anxiety, because
It
when we're
does.
thinking about next
Amazingly,
month and next year, yeah,
amazing,
yeah,
and it makes you plan better, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
once you have a good sense of where you are, you can set goals that are reasonable. Once you
Hmm.
know
Hmm.
I'm really not managing my money well as I'm going through my bank account, and you're in the present and you're taking that sadness about how you're managing your money, you can say, okay, my next goal is to know how to manage what I have, not just to make $1 million that I could waste. Being in the
Yeah,
present,
yeah.
better awareness of our strengths, some of our
Hmm.
challenges. And I think it also makes us celebrate life. Life is to be celebrated.
Hmm.
Just the fact that we're breathing is a
Yeah,
gift. The things
yeah,
that money
yeah.
cannot buy. But for all of us,
Hmm.
it's a learning process. So if some of our viewers are not there, that's fine. We're all learning, right? To do
Yeah,
better.
yeah,
To be-
yeah. And I think one of the I was so glad when I saw it on yours, is one of the reasons I agreed to do this program was because it was to help us marry that actually the body, the mind is quite important, and it relates to every part of our body. And God is actually quite interested in our minds. you know
Yes.
we think that the mind is some far thing, and when it comes to mental health and looking after, we eat the right foods, we exercise, we go to the doctor, but nobody's really mindful about what's going on in their mental well-being. And every time you say, oh, somebody's distressed, or they're anxious, or they might even have a full-on mental health disorder, we go into this space of denial, like it doesn't really exist. And I find it so fascinating, because without your mind. That's why, God is interested in your mind. That's why he says things like, do not be anxious. He knows when you are distressed, all those things. So do you think people of color or ethnic minorities, I know you guys in America use that word, we tend to use ethnic minorities, and some people hate that.
We're
No, they
becoming a
don't.
majority, though. We're becoming a majority out there.
Yes.
I don't want to feel like a minority. That's what they call us. That's
No.
but deep
Yeah,
inside, I see
but
why people could,
yeah. So, but in terms of, us, let's use that word. Do you feel that we sort of resist the idea? Let me use that word. Let me use a counseling word. Resist it more than somebody who is Caucasian, for example.
I think so. And there are various reasons for that. I think our
Mm-hmm.
goal is to educate and encourage people.
Mm-hmm.
If you want me to talk a little bit about what some of the
Ye-
reasons could be. Yeah,
Yeah,
one
yeah.
of the main reasons I know in America is that clinical psychology is a very Eurocentric kind of
Mm-hmm.
discipline. It's
Yeah.
very much individualistic, where somebody sits with you and they talk about their problems.
Mm-hmm.
Many times in our communities, we're more of a
Community based
community-based mindset, where
in
we
our
see
approach.
in our approach as part of a group. So it may feel
Yeah.
a little bit uncomfortable to go to a person that you've never met to share your personal issues.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when a family and a community has a lot of stressors like poverty, discrimination, there can be anxiety about those issues that makes it even more anxiety provoking to go talk to somebody who may not look like you or who may not
Or
understand
even understand.
exactly some of the stresses that you're facing. So just overcoming that barrier and that person not really understanding some of those stresses can also make you feel like, is this a worthy experience? I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed that many therapists of Eurocentric or who are not Black may not be as active in providing practical problem solving in therapy right away. They may want to
Mm-hmm.
just talk about their feelings as more. And when people are facing practical issues, they want you to go there. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's more like tailoring our approaches to work with people who come from communities where there's a lot of stress, addressing
Mm-hmm.
what those stresses are, connecting them with resources so they know coming to therapy is also going to help me to find a job or to know how to communicate with somebody if I feel like I'm being
Mm-hmm.
discriminated against, all those issues.
Mm-hmm.
Another aspect too is sometimes I think we just feel that this is not a problem that affects us. We may feel that it's
Yeah.
a problem that
Yeah.
only affects people who are not Black, which is
Mm-hmm.
obviously not true. And then the one thing that also comes to my mind is in systems where there's a lot of discrimination, we find that we do overdiagnose Black people. Like in
Yeah.
America here,
Yeah. We've had
Black
that
men are
issue
like
between.
diagnosed as antisocial. And even if they
Mm-hmm.
do the MMPI, on one of the scales on the MMPI, there's an elevation that is higher for Black people because of discrimination. If somebody interprets that result and does not take into account race, they may portray that person in a negative light, which can be
Mm-hmm.
devastating. Or a child can be noticed and considered oppositional in school and put in a special ed class because of racism. So there are
Mm-hmm.
various reasons, but we can overcome them. And us being people of color working in this field, and the more that come in is also helpful for people who are needing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also a lot of the guests I've had are people who work in this field, doctors, psychiatrists, people like yourself, psychotherapists, counselors, just to let our people know that actually we're here,
Yes.
we're available. And does it also cut across people who of faith, because that's like another barrier sometimes I find. We're already struggling with the basic needs. Somebody has a housing issue or an immigration issue, and you're telling me to talk about how I feel. That's almost like a luxury because I have to survive today. Yeah. So when we now add this concept of faith, people are going to kill me. I'm using words like faith being a concept now. Okay, when we now add that concept of faith, right? Does it make us more resistance now? Because now we have something else.
I think so. I think we hide behind faith. I think it's very convenient. And I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
that to minimize our faith in any way.
Yeah.
Had a wonderful experience of knowing the Lord when I was 16 years old. And the gospel has changed my life. But from some of my early experiences, I always found emotions in the Word of God even before I became
Mm-hmm.
a psychologist. I
Mm-hmm.
see throughout the scriptures themes where Elijah was depressed and wanted to die. And when Jesus was at the cross, he asked one of the disciples to take care of his mom.
Mm-hmm.
Because he kind of knew that my mom is going to need your support. The Bible says
Yeah.
when he was
Yeah.
God, he was crying and he says he was overwhelmed. And he says, "Can you be with me for 1 hour?" It suggests that Jesus was lonely. He wanted a
Mm-hmm.
connection with the disciples.
Company.
But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
he wanted company. He felt alone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the
And
scripture
the
always,
encouragement and the support. Yeah.
yes. And the
Mm-hmm.
scripture always says that many times Jesus was moved with compassion. That's the mind,
Yes. Yes.
emotion.
Yes.
So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if unfortunately we've overgeneralized faith in a way that is works with our bias. We already had this bias, right? And
Mm-hmm.
now that we have
Mm-hmm.
faith, we can just kind of package it nicely and say, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I hear preachers
Mm-hmm.
say, if you cry, you don't have faith. If you're very upset, that means you're not standing. There are people dying because
Mm-hmm.
of this
Mm-hmm.
misinformation. So I think,
Mm-hmm.
though, as time is going on, Lydia, I don't know about your experience, I'm beginning to see pastors asking for therapists, which
Mm-hmm.
never used to happen.
It
10
happened
years
before.
ago,
Yeah.
it was almost unheard of. Now there are
Mm-hmm.
women
Mm-hmm.
conferences, and the pastor is like, they want you to come back. And I can't believe
Mm-hmm.
it because I'm seeing that progress. And
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
highly commendable that we're beginning
Mm-hmm.
to move in that direction. So I applaud the
Yeah.
pastors. Many of them are beginning to do that. It's a process,
Yeah.
but I can see growth. And that's
Yeah.
something that really
Mm.
gratifies.
Because sometimes, even when people have, I mean, mental health, it almost seems like they have less faith if they admit it. Yeah. I'm not saying God is not a healer, but people get cancer and we pray alongside them. We don't tell them not to take medication. We pray alongside them and we're praying even the medication will work, it will agree with their bodies, they won't have reactions. But when it comes to mental health, everybody it's like everybody just shuts off. And I've even heard where actually they're told, oh, don't take the medication, don't go to the psychiatrist, they'll just drug you. All of those fears. And then it's like nobody's helping, but nobody's they don't know what to do. Maybe that's a better word. And that in fact I think makes the person even more distressed. So somebody,
Absolutely.
let me use even something quite simple, like somebody's having high levels of anxiety. Yeah. They go to the pastor, they pray. Maybe they're okay on Sunday. By Tuesday again, it kicks off. And they might need some antidepressants or something, or they're quite depressed. And everybody is going, God has not given you a spirit of depression, but not that the person doesn't know the scriptures, it just isn't working at the moment. Like faith doesn't
Yes.
always kick off. Yeah. So
Yes.
do, do does that, I think this idea of, does that make us less Christians when we ask for help?
No, definitely not. And I'm wondering whether
Mm-hmm.
we've also we've kind of boxed in, put in a box what faith means. When we look at Hebrew 11 and it talks
Mm-hmm.
about faith, those people have some difficult life processes.
Yeah.
Towards the
Yes.
end of
Yeah.
the chapter, it says that people actually went through difficult
All of
situations
that.
and things
Yes.
were not fully met. So faith means
Yeah.
believing. It doesn't mean the absence of pain and distress.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, those kind of ideas actually hinders healing because once you have shame about what you're going through, that adds an additional layer of psychological suffering to your process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Accepting that you have it and beginning to explore different ways of handling it actually empowers you. The reason
Mm-hmm.
this is also
Mm-hmm.
important is we do know that the research says that even with medication, there are many life changes that people need to make in order to have success in treatment for therapy and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if you shut down totally getting mental health help, how are you going to make some of those life changes and practice some of those techniques and things you need to do to get better? So
Mm-hmm.
it's too narrow-minded to see it just as don't take the meds. There are life changes. There might be relationships you need to reevaluate. There might be
Mm-hmm.
sleeping patterns that need to change. There might be
Mm-hmm.
appetite issues. You may need to do walking meditation. You may need to learn to manage your anxiety more in terms of your stressors. Maybe you're overloaded. So there may be just
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle changes in addition to the meds that can go a long way. But imagine
Mm-hmm.
shutting something down without knowing what you have as your option. If you have a
Mm-hmm.
cancer diagnosis, you're going to go to the doctor and you would explore your options. You
Mm-hmm.
want to know what is out there. Why would you not do that when it comes to this wonderful mind that God has given you? And another
Mm-hmm.
thing too is there have been MRIs that show that the active parts of the brain that are impacted by depression. For example, in depression, there's hippocampal volume loss, where people
Mm-hmm.
have loss of memory and concentration. You're not going to be able to be a wife, a mom, a husband, and all the things you want to be, a successful businessman, a successful career person, if you have loss of memory, your mood is sad, you go to bed at night, you wake up in the morning, you don't feel rested, you can't function. So lifestyle changes plus medication plus community support plus spiritual support plus
Yeah.
these scriptures we're talking about, all of them coming together, what an empowering
Mm-hmm.
thing to
It
do.
can be.
Mix
Yeah.
it all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think some people, if we go back to when you were talking about the relationships, how they review, relationships, what's going on in their lives. I think some people are stuck, because they haven't reviewed the relationships. They haven't checked what part that they're playing. Yeah. So they're going all the time uh, to be prayed for and prayed with. Yeah. And it's quite exhausting for the pastors, for the leadership, because this woman is coming every week or man is coming every week. But actually, I say to my clients, what you need is inside of you. It's nothing external. You need to look inside. So sometimes, like those that they're stuck and they're repeating the same stories over and over again. And when they come to therapy, they can then work it out and become unstuck.
That's
So
right.
it might not
That's
even
right.
need the medication. It might just need somebody who is able to sit with you week after week after week until you become unstuck. Not
Right.
necessarily that. I think sometimes we want to pray everything away.
Which means that we become less
You don't
responsible
take,
for our
yes, we
situation.
don't take any responsibility. That's where
And
I
the
was
scripture
going.
says we are co-laborers with God. We are
Yes.
co-laborers with God, which means you are aligning. God gives us our free will, our mind, and our body, and is giving us the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to make decisions. Why should we then defer that responsibility to God? That means that, and that's why many of us are not as successful as we could be, right?
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
stigmatize being stuck. Being stuck means I need to grow in an area. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means
Yeah.
now I know something is not right and I want to work on it. That is a good
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah. And I think it goes back to this acceptance. I've been praying about, sometimes we believe like God is withholding something from us, you know. Uh, and then I don't know whether it's all of us, but, there's a lot of, I think, in our interpretation, God almost comes
Yeah.
across like a carrot and stick kind of God. So you do this, I give you this. If you don't do it, then you get punished. And there is no father in between. It's like God doesn't have emotions and can't relate to us, you know, along the way. But this responsibility thing is something like we need to look inwards to find out what is it that I'm doing that is contributing either to this situation or to what I'm thinking, because it can't be pray this week, pray next week, and the situation doesn't shift. I know it's not like we don't wait for things until whenever God has destined the timing. But there are some things I think we can, like you say, be co-laborers, align with him, and work with. And that also includes us saying, actually, I need help. And I think we struggle with that word, that I need help. I'm not managing very well. I'm stressed. I'm depressed. If you say to a Christian, I'm depressed, oh, God forbid, can you be not depressed? Like we are devoid of emotions. It's quite interesting.
And I'm wondering whether we're also, maybe that's one of the reasons why we have such a prevalence of chronic health issues in our community.
Yes.
Like hypertension,
high blood pressure,
just
diabetes.
Changes we have to make. But we will pray over it. But I want to encourage people, pray as if you never needed to work, and work as if you never needed to pray. When you pray with pastor in church, the moment you get out of that prayer, ask, what should I do in line with the prayer I just offered?
Received.
See the answer I'm looking for. So prayer should challenge us to start to look inward and look at not just what we're doing wrong, but also some things that may even be out of our control. Like if you're in an abusive relationship and you've lied about the person beating you, maybe now it's time to get up and say, I'm really this traumatized. Because sometimes the pastors are not really told the full story.
Yes.
What is going on? They're praying abstractly. People have 100 issues they're hiding away. And week after week, they're not getting better because they're not dealing with it. So prayer is wonderful. You need to pray. But prayer also pushes you to explore those things you need to do to bring that answer for the prayer that you're asking.
I think one of the things about prayer is that it's supposed to change us, just like you've described now, because it's supposed to look internally. What am I doing? What do I need to do? But on the other hand, we're like praying like the prayer changes God. God is God. He's got everything that he has. Doesn't need us to do those things. So in terms of, if we just review that, because I think what you said is really pivotal. When we go to pray or receive prayer, somebody's joining their faith with us, after the time, ask the Holy Spirit, what is it that I'm supposed to do? Is it time to speak? Is it time, which scripture am I supposed to use? Is it time to seek help, which is what you're saying? So sometimes, as you say, people hide a lot, because we believe that if we tell the truth, then either we're not good enough. So like not a good enough parent, not a good enough wife, not a good enough Christian, because I admitted that there is a failing. So if we can't admit the failing, then it can't be fixed.
That's right. We have to admit to it. And that is a sign of our humanity. We are not perfect. Right? The first family was pretty dysfunctional. One brother killed the other. The Bible records dysfunctional stories of people's messes. The Bible is not a sanitized book. It records some pretty bad stuff of what people did. Can we be real? And the earlier we admit our problems, the easier it is to control it, to work with it, to make amends, learn and grow from it.
I think there is maybe it's way that we interpret it. I'm not going to say just the way that it's preached, but a way that it's interpreted to us, like the Bible is full of perfect people. But if you take from the first family to almost the end, there is tragedy, rape, miscarriages, feuding in families, disobedience, depression. So I think God put it all together to show us that you're human, and these are the realistic journeys in life, but how we manage. I always say it's not about the challenge, but it's how you manage the challenge when you're in it and how to get a good outcome of it. Then we can say, like your story, that all things work together for good. When we're in it, it doesn't feel like, but the end will show the journey. Okay, so how, I know for you it's clear, just like for me, when I read theories and stuff, I'm thinking, you know what, this is in the Bible. Somebody just took it out and put it in a different context. Yeah, and somehow they've got us to believe that it's a concept away from God, you know, like counseling and psychology is all away from God. Meanwhile, we have scriptures like, as a man thinketh, so he is. And we use these scriptures. Whatever things are good, whatever things are pure, those are the things to ponder off. But those are the things that we do in our rooms, isn't it? That's what we tell the clients when they come. So there's always this when I say to people, I think the person should see a therapist or a psychologist or a counselor, they say something like, oh, is it a Christian one?
Mhm.
And I'm like, when you go to your doctor, do you ask if he's a Muslim or a Hindu or a Sikh or an atheist? You just go and accept whatever diagnosis he gives you. So, but in this realm, I get it because, of course, it's your mind. It's a little bit more complex, but
Yeah.
the way we throw it away, we throw that idea away
Yes.
is and that's another thing they say to you. Oh, is a person is Christian? I don't want to go if they're not a Christian. I'm like, being a Christian doesn't mean that they're a good therapist. It just means they're a Christian. Yeah, So how can we, if you just explain maybe a little bit how we can marry this idea of faith and psychology? I picked it up from your your website. I think it's a
I think
topic
the way,
you.
yes, I think the way to marry it is, personally, when I do psychology, even if it's a Christian I'm working with, especially somebody that's used the word a lot and used scriptures a lot, I'm very careful about constantly bringing up the scripture, because sometimes people use it a lot. It gives them
Mm-hmm,
this momentary sense of peace, but it's not
mm-hmm,
dealing with the fundamental
mm-hmm,
issues.
mm-hmm,
So I approach faith mainly like when I'm working with a client, even a client who is not a Christian. Deep inside, I'm earnestly praying and saying, God, what is my next strategy with this person? Just me as a
mm-hmm.
therapist.
Yeah,
What is my
yeah.
strategy with this person? How should I encourage them? But also deep inside, I'll never tell them this. I'm praying for them.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'm praying that they will receive relief. And I'm also praying
Mm-hmm.
to for compassion. One of the
Yeah.
most powerful components of therapy in terms of progress is the element of empathy,
Mm-hmm,
the ability
mm-hmm.
to empathize with somebody in pain. They say, regardless, whether it is CBT, psychodynamic, dialect, DBT, whatever it is,
DBT. Mm-hmm,
empathy is that healing component, being able to connect with them in their pain. People come back
mm-hmm,
weeks after they have the same problem and they feel better because
mm-hmm,
the power
mm-hmm.
of empathy. So the
Yeah.
way we marry it is we acknowledge the God that they believe in. We
Mm-hmm,
validate what they believe. We don't take it away. It gives them a source of comfort. There's research that shows that being in a religious community has psychological benefits. So we
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
dampen what they have. We
Mm-hmm,
acknowledge,
mm-hmm,
but we then focus on, let's get practical here. Let's live this word that you're preaching, and we don't say it like that, so it doesn't look like we're
mm-hmm,
trying to be
mm-hmm,
condescending. Let's put this word that you're preaching, let's put it into practice, and
mm-hmm,
let's
mm-hmm.
start acknowledging. Let's start living out. So, for example, there's a scripture that says, um, a wise man or a prudent man sees evil from afar and hides himself. That is a
Mm-hmm,
practical action. We're going
mm-hmm,
to start
mm-hmm,
teaching people skills. Okay,
mm-hmm,
you've missed this, you've missed that. You prayed over this person, they haven't changed, but are you endangering your life by continuing in it and having no boundaries? So
mm-hmm,
now we're
mm-hmm,
taking them from acknowledging where they are, because if you take what people have, they will run from you. You
mm-hmm,
gotta acknowledge what they have, validate what they have, let them know that it's not a sign that God has failed, but they need to see that they also can work with God, that they
mm-hmm,
and God are partners in this healing journey.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When people have a sense that is only God, they feel helpless. But if they see
Mm-hmm.
themselves working with God, they feel, okay, good, God is on my side. He's not against
Yeah.
counseling,
Mm-hmm,
He's not
mm-hmm,
against therapy. And I've seen and make so much progress, because once people feel like God is with what they're doing, it encourages them to do more. So marrying it involves a lot of empathy, validating what they have, but also going against some of the spiritual beliefs that are detrimental to somebody's mental health. And that comes with education. If your pastor says you can never leave a man who is beating you up, and you're losing your hair and you're suicidal, that is wrong doctrine. We need to go against some of those, because some of that could lead to the death, the physical or mental illness, but also to
well-being
physical.
of somebody. Yeah.
We need to educate the research and the facts about the effect of what is going on. And I think the more information people have, my experience has been they start to say, okay, I get it now. And they start to feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I know you're a domestic violence advocate. And a lot of times, just like you've described now, we talk about the person that is directly affected, which could be the man or the woman. Now, there is a part of it that really interests me, because I think if somebody doesn't have the capacity to save themselves, their instinct might go to the children.
That's right.
Okay. So, but I think sometimes, not all the time, we assume the children are safe and they're okay. But they're witnessing this abuse, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's psychological, whether it's financial, on whatever level, the other parent is being abused. That we know that most of the time it's the woman, but it does happen sometimes to men. So how does this impact children? Because I think it's a part that we negate and forget that, there is something going on for the children as well.
I think that's an area that the more education we give in that area, I think it will help a lot of parents, just in terms of people who are even married, who want to stay in their relationships. Maybe this would be a motivation for them to start to work on it. One of the things we know is that the home is supposed to be a safe environment, both psychologically, mentally, and physically, for a child to grow and develop in a proper way. So when there's acute distress in the home, even if they beat each other at night, there's an energy and there's a negativity in that environment that everyone, even young children, subconsciously knows something is wrong. There's danger in the air. The place that is meant to be a safe place that allows them to be nurtured, allows them to feel safe, is now in danger. When they close their door and come into the house, that is a danger zone. It increases hypervigilance for children who are raised in that environment.
Yeah.
Many of those children are supposedly good kids. I've met a lot of mothers who've been abused. Oh, he's a wonderful child. He takes care of me. That's a problem. Because the child is clingy to her as a parent, looking out for her, feeling bad about how the father treated her, and taking on a role that the child is not emotionally developed to take on. So you have a parentified child, a child who is a caretaker, a child who is not able to play and do the things to make him feel good, and he's worrying about you. So those kids will have anxiety, more likely. They're going to have depression. Many of the mothers, because when they're beaten up, the primary challenge they have, even with psychological abuse, and in some cases, I've worked with a few men who have also been abused, they have depression. When you're depressed, you deal with low energy, fatigue, you deal with loss of memory, short-term memory, and concentration. How are you going to be able to be present to nurture a child when you're in depression? That's going to be almost impossible. And also, the other challenge is when a child witnesses one parent taking such advantage of another parent, they do not understand give and take in relationships. They believe that in order to succeed in relationships, even though they may not say this is being learned subconsciously, that it takes one person defeating the other for there to be relationship. So this child is learning, I need to abuse somebody or take advantage of them, or they take advantage of me to be happy. So what are they more likely to do? They say boys are 4 to 5 times more likely to abuse their own partners if they have witnessed their father abusing their mothers. Girls are more likely to choose men that will abuse them and stay longer than they need to in those relationships because of the template that's been imprinted on their mind from home. I worked with a young man once and he had terrible anxiety. He wouldn't go to school. Well, the mother brought him in. Everything assessment I did showed the kid was doing well, but he did not want to go to school. So one day she came in to admit to me that she's in an abusive relationship. That was why the young man was getting in trouble and he was going to be put in alternative school because of his behavior, because he wanted to protect his mom. When she admitted and moved out, the problems disappeared. I am not saying that people should leave this person or not. That's not my decision. But don't think your children are not going to be damaged in the long term.
Right.
You start a generational cycle of violence that would impact this kid's ability to monitor their emotions in the future. Think about it. When you're crying in the room and hiding your scars, how are you going to be present to help this child to develop coping skills that are age appropriate? How are you going to teach them to self-harm and develop self-soothing skills if you are being hit? Everything in that environment is dangerous, and your child is a victim in every every sense of the word, whether they've been hit or not. So you are in trouble and you need to get help if you're in that situation, and do not spiritualize it. I'm dealing with a lot of adults whose parents remained married for 40 years who are dealing with the consequences of it. There's trauma, there's dreams of what happened when they were young. They misinterpret signals of violence. They think it's love because when their parents beat each other a lot, now they're in love. So they miss. And even the best people who understand this is not where they want to be, they almost always end up in that situation. So for a Christian standpoint, we have to break this generational curse. It is a curse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Continue violence and not deal with it. Now, can we deal with it? Yes, we can. But don't think your children are not impacted. And I can go on and on. Many of the siblings as well would align, they join factions. One would align with the dad, one would align with the mom. We call it aligning with the aggressor. The person who is powerful is the one in control. Let's cower to him because if we're not happy with dad or dad who's mad with us, what happened to mom is going to happen to us. Look at the mindset of what authority looks like. The whole concept of authority is distorted by what they're experiencing now. I'm sorry, I thought I could go on and on about this. So I'm just
No. Actually, it's quite important, and I wish we'd even based the whole conversation on it, because it's something I think. Uh, if a woman is being hit or a man, you come out in the morning, even if they're doing it in the bedroom, you know, and they imagine the children aren't hearing. The person has the evidence on them, or as you say, they might be doing it in the room and they come out, they're depressed and unable to function. I think we have this idea that if the person stays in the abusive relationship, somehow it's better for the children because they're in a two-parent home, you know. And this is always the constant argument. And sometimes I feel these women feel like this is the better choice. And they even say it, I'm staying because of my children, which I don't think it's a true representation. They're staying for something else. It can't be for the children because I think the children are being damaged. But if they feel like there is some semblance of normality, then it's better than splitting the children. What's your take on that?
I think our culture, I mean, I can talk from being from the Nigerian culture and the spiritual culture, it is more stigmatizing to be divorced than to be in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
You actually be perceived as strong for taking it. You will hear stories about, oh, she took it. She's such a wonderful woman. Oh, he took advantage of her for 20 years, but look at how wonderful she is now. Look, her children have turned out right. God has blessed her. Many of those women, I know a few of them have health issues. Some of them have blind eyes over this. I've dealt with women in their 60s and 70s depressed over this. But because the children have turned right outright, God has vindicated her. Wrong. So I think that stigma forces many women to stay. And I wish I could tell you I blame them. I don't. But the challenge here is if you really look around, I know a family like that where the mom stayed with the dad. The kids are blunt in their affect and their mood and everything until now. Talk to them for a few minutes, you get irritability, you get anger, you get frustration. There's not that happy experience. So I think the thing is, whatever reason you're staying for, get educated about the impact of domestic violence on you, your children, your grandchildren, and your great grandchildren. And it goes on and on. And as you get that information, if you really want to keep your marriage, talk to your spouse about it. Let's go talk to somebody, because this is going to destroy us. We have a secret, and we look good on Sunday. We're all dressed up in uniform, but we're
Oh,
dying inside.
yes.
And we look so good, and we're on Facebook, but we're living in trouble. And those children will be out asking for deliverance and all the prayers and counseling 10, 15 years from now. You will feed this monster till it's out of control, and you cannot afford to do that. So no denial anymore. That's the beginning.
I think that the aspect of actually generational trauma, because a lot of times when we're praying either to correct what was generational trauma or to prevent some kind of trauma. So when I listen sometimes to prayer, I'm a bit mischievous. I'm thinking, oh, okay, these are just trauma points. But I think what you're saying now, what the women or the men don't realize at the point is that we're perpetrating something that has been in the family. So maybe mom and dad's marriage was similar, where dad was abusive on some level, and she saw her mother take it. So she's in another one. It's abusive on, maybe a different form. Maybe one was physical, one is financial and emotional, and she saw mom take it. So now she's taking it. Even if she goes to mom will say, oh, is he feeding you? Did he give you money for the children? Did he ask you to leave the home? If she says no, please go back home. Don't bring disgrace. I heard shot recently where it was a bishop's daughter. And of course, he didn't want his daughter to be divorced. So he kept saying to her, she has to go back. I think until somebody asked him, would you prefer a divorced daughter or a dead daughter? And he chose the divorced one. But his wife and him, they were like, she had to stay in the home because it presents a good picture. Nobody wants to ruin the beautiful picture.
But I think if we would just even confront domestic violence early on, let's not focus on separation or divorce. Let's say in this marriage, I'm not going to be beaten. I'm not going to tolerate it. And acknowledge that. But we enable the abuser by saying, I got to be married. And then the abuser uses that as a hold to keep the abuse going. You don't want to be divorced, so I can keep beating you. So nobody should ever think that you're going to be with them under any circumstance. If they want to kill, not be there. So don't tell people we'll never be divorced. I want to stay married if I'm safe here. Not vowing to be with him when he's abusing you further or you are abusing him. So we give power to the abuser with someone.
We do. We enable the abuser. We do. And this idea that it will then go on to the children. And the person in their abusive relationship is actually starting generational trauma because they didn't deal with their own trauma. They didn't make sure it stops. They didn't tell the children that this is not how a relationship is. So what they didn't deal with, they're leaving it now for their children to internalize, for it to manifest somewhat. And then it goes on, and then they end up praying for another child, one of their children, who now ends up in either a bad relationship or all of them end up in a bad relationship. So I think what I was trying to bring is just exactly what you said. When you're in these positions and you have children, you have to think, how is this impacting my child or my children? And am I doing it for them or am I doing it for me? Because they have their own lives to live, and it's your responsibility as a parent to give them the best that you can give. So we've come to time. What is going to be your last word for us?
I think my last word is that I don't want anyone to give up, no matter how hard things are right now. The fact that you've gone through so much and things are not working out does not mean that God has given up on you or you can't get help. Every time you feel stuck is an opportunity for you to learn something new about yourself, about what the strengths you have and what you need. And that is an empowering moment. See it as an opportunity to grow, see it as an opportunity to heal, and just see it as an opportunity to be a better person. It's a tough world we're living in. But as long as we understand that being alive is a gift, we'll be all right.
Yeah. And there's always tomorrow to do better.
There's always tomorrow to do better. And we can learn from where we are. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I know you're big on social media, so I'm going to leave you to share all your links and so that people can look at you.
I need to do better. Yes, thank you. I've been hibernating, doing my own self-care, but I'm going to be posting a lot more. My YouTube channel is Balancing Your Life with Dr. Rola, but if you go into YouTube and do Ask Dr. Rola, it will come up. I have about 30, 40 videos there. Facebook, Ask Dr. Rola, everywhere, AskDrRola. So you put that in YouTube, Twitter, whatever, it will come up. And it's all about mental health and well-being. We're going to do well in life. We keep on going, keep on taking care of our mind. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. Hopefully you'll come back again. I'm sure there are loads.
So.
I looked through
your
videos yesterday.
You feel like a friend. It feels good already. This is our first time of meeting. So this is awesome. Yes. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you.
Take care of yourself. Be safe out there.
I will.
God bless.
I will. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. What an interview that was full of so many little nuggets that we could use. We could use for ourselves. We could use for the people around us. We could use for even people who are in abusive relationships. Thank you for watching again. My name is Lydia Khalil.
LCBN television broadcasts 24/7 on UK Freeview Channel 271, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Google TV, See Love World, LCBNTV.com, LifeComTV.com.